Now I'd like to guide you through the three different systems of using wagglers in a locked position. And I'll tell you a little about the advantages and disadvantages of each of them. But I think I'll start with using the classic split shot method, that is locking the plastic leg. Remember, the float is going to be up here. This is just the bottom part of the plastic stem which the line goes through. So the simplest way and the most commonly used before was just using the split shot, locking the float in position. And when you want to change the depth, you simply move the split shot up or down to the depth that you want to move. Now this is a quick brief mention also to when you move the shot, you should wet the line, because if you move the shot too quickly when it's dry, you can damage the line, giving you a weak point, and you can break there very easily. Now again, I'm only going to touch on this, but it's really important to hit you with this several times. When you're using the bulk shot system, you should have at least 2/3 locking the float into position and only 1/3 acting as a drop shot by the hook or a jig, which is the bulk shot. So it must be 1/3 or less and 2/3 or more. That's the way you avoid tangles. It's a combination of the right cast, the right feathering, and the right weight. The next one, and the most versatile system, is using the swivel, which I've got on the bottom of this one. This is one size larger than the one that, this was a prototype. This is bigger, hopefully so that you can see it more easily. I've got this on a TG bodied Waggler 13. But this system can be fished two ways, and it has tremendous advantages over the other two systems because it is interchangeable. It's very, very easy to just open the eye and then take the float out. So if the conditions change, it allows you to switch to a bigger or smaller float. So it's very, very simple. All you do is put the little safety pin section through the eyelet, and then you close it. And another little tip is that some of them have a little piece of wire stud which is slightly too long. It's impossible to moderate. It'd be a good idea to trim that off as small as you can. So the smaller that you make it, the better it is. So that just unclips and you can switch bigger or low. It's critical. But when you're using the fast change float swivel, you must do the same as you do with the bulk shot. You must have at least 2/3 locking it, and you can do it two ways. And the way that I like to do it, which gives you even more flexibility, is to use the float stop and the bead. And by doing that, if you suddenly move to a different spot, or if you want to fish farther and you have to go deeper, then you've got the bead on the line and you haven't got to change it. And you can always leave it on there. So you can just push the bead up, and you can, as you see here, I have bead and or shot. So you could very easily just push that bead further back and put another split shot in there to give you the 2/3 bulk. And the rest would go down to the rest of the bulk shot would be and or a jig. Now I just want to make a note here not to confuse you. In my eagerness to do this drawing, I put it on. This is a rest shot, and it's only used when you're fishing this float as a slip. So the point, but I'll go into that when we go on to the slip floats. So again, you've got the bead and the float stop and the bulk, which allows you, which must be 2/3, and the drop shot or the remainder of the or a jig must be 1/3 or less. You can get away with doing more than that when you're fishing very close, but anytime you have to cast, you'll get into tangles because the weight will come around and wrap around the float. But I must tell you, I mean, it still happens to me now. I wish I could say I was perfect, but I don't. A freak gust of wind can cause a tangle to any professional at any time. So don't be discouraged when it happens, because part of taking advantage of this whole float system is learning how to avoid tangles. If this was tangle-free, anybody would do it. That's why the people that have a great fishermen in Europe, the world champions, are people that know how to take things easy. The slower and the more methodical you do it, the less tangles you got. If you're really excited and you punch and you do jerky things, then you get into tangles. Now, the last system, which is mainly used when you're fishing for very aggressive fish, and you can only really use this if you're using a if you fish deep, if you're fishing with a very long pole or a very, very long rod, or are you fishing in shallow water? Now remember, you can fish these systems, you can fish this system on a pole and the triple lock. This is obviously, this system with the float stop you would use if you thought you couldn't use it on a pole, because of course you can't fish dip with it. But the triple lock system is a great way to fish, and out that this is a different system so that the black line shows out better. You'll have to excuse my drawings. As I said before, I mean, on other tapes, I'm not Picasso, but this teaches you everything you need to know. So the line goes through the eyelet and around the back and around 3 times. Do not, and take great care that your line does not pass through one of the other loops, because then you're making a knot, which means that you can't slip the float up and down the line. And how you do that is, if you want to go deeper or shallower, all you do simply is slacken the line. And when the line's slack, you can simply just hold the float at the base and you can move it up and down the line very easily. And once you're fishing and when you cast, the weight of the line and the tautness on the line just locks it. So that's why it's called a triple lock. This is a real great way to fish with a bulk weight. If you want to get weight down to the bottom quick, if you have one of those golden days when there's lots of fish, you don't want to wait for the drop shot to go all the way down slowly, because remember, it's only 1/3 or less. When you want to get to fish quick and you want to get through small fish, by putting all of the the bulk shot together, or the jig, you just group it together, or you can use, on a small float, you can use one very big jig. And remember, very quickly, I'll say this again now, you can often put a jig on the line, any one of these, and you can trim lead off behind the head of it to make it lighter. Don't be afraid to do that. A little bit of lead out the back of any jig is not going to be noticeable. And if it bothers you, you can just put a little blob of fast-drying white paint on the back of it to cover it up. So speed fishing, to get the bulk through small fish or to get it down quick, if you're getting a lot of bites, the triple lock system is great. For great flexibility and for interchangeability, the float swivel is tremendous with the float stop. That gives you can do anything. But again, with this, you have to be patient, give it a little more time, because you can get tangles. And if you don't cast easily, or if your finger catches the line, or there's a knot on the reel when you're casting and the float jerks, if your jig or your hook goes over that, you can have a real mess. But you have to be patient. I mean, if I had 5 cents for every tangle I've ever had in my life, I could retire as a billionaire, the tangles I've had. But that's part of the price. When you make a couple of mistakes, it teaches you not to do that again. I mean, it's an old lesson that was taught to me when I was a very young fisherman, and that's a lesson bought is better than taught. In other words, if you make a mistake, boy, do you really, it's ingrained, it's there. So this is the most complex, but again, after you've used it for a little while, it gives you tremendous flexibility. If you go to a place that's new, or if you're on a day when the weather's changing dramatically, this is a great system. If you know exactly what you're doing, then this is a tremendous system, just a straightforward bulk, just locking it. And this is for casting. If you're fishing very close, you can use 2-shot around the float, and you can put more weight down. But if you're casting it, it must be 2/3 and 1/3. And that covers all of the major points that you'll need to know about using locked systems with wagglers.